All right, we are recording. Let's see, let's make sure I am recording. All right, so it looks like it is working. Transcription may not work, but recording has started. So we are going to talk about basic savings, some basic stuff, but overall things that you may not have thought of and things that you can maybe pass on to your dependents or family members or anyone out there, things that you really don't think about that can change your perspective. One, make it more convenient for you. Two, make you a lot more interest, which is good or bad depending on your taxable situation. And just overall things to think about and how to arrange your life to make it easier. For this one, I have one screen. So if you have any questions along the way, please ask them along the way. Go ahead, just chime in. Don't worry about raising your hand. Just go ahead and come off mic, ask the question, or put it in the chat. And what I'll do is toggle between the two to make sure I can answer questions as they pop up. So the slides are already out there on the Teams page, and I'm assuming you already are members. I'm not going to go over that because this is posted on the Teams page, so we don't have to worry about it. All right, basic savings trainings. I'm Colonel Todd Domachowski, still active duty for another 11 days, and then it will be Colonel retired, Todd Domachowski. So again, the basic savings, we'll talk about a bunch of stuff, but I want to start with a warning. I always like to put things in here just to make sure you know I'm not going to overpromise. I'm not going to give you any words of wisdom that are going to make you filthy rich, but work towards wealth. So we're not going to make you rich today or even tomorrow, but we're going to work towards wealth. You may never actually reach the term and the comfort of wealth, but we can work on getting there and building comfort factors into your life. I'm going to show you how to make smart decisions, save smartly, and move in the right direction. But I do ask one thing is to pay it forward. Financial literacy, although more schools are pushing towards it, this is from personal experience. I know the teachers we have pushing financial literacy are not the best folks. They're just going over a curriculum. They don't understand it. My wife's school does teach financial literacy, but it's just assigned to a math teacher. So they're not someone, I'm not going to say I'm the perfect person. It's not someone like me who's done personal counseling for over 25 years. It's someone who's just on the team and they give them the curriculum. So I ask you to pay it forward. So this is what we're going to cover here. Map reading 101, budget, and kind of, I won't read them all to you, but we're going to cover all this. And please, again, ask questions along the way. Map reading 101, this is basic stuff, but it's really good to kind of go back to setting goals. Setting goals is you want to visualize what you want to write it down. It could be a physical written statement, it could be on your computer. At the end of my career in the building, I was keeping a little picture on my screen. It was a sloth, and I'm not going to say the full word, but basically is let that crap go. And crap was not the word, it was another word. Trying to move on into my life, most of you know that I had some health problems at the end, still have them here, but I need to learn to let things go to kind of de-stress my life. So kind of the same thing. Visualize, write down the goals, keep a picture in front of you, just motivate yourself, and then turn each goal into a plan of operation. How are you going to get there? And then you got to understand the time involved with operations. You're not going to be rich tomorrow. Like I had success on the roulette wheel. Turn 90 to 900 to $1,000. That's luck. If you are going to bet on the roulette wheel to make you rich or to get you to your goal, that's a fool's plan, because I easily could have turned it the other way and lost the $90 and not even got there. So understanding goals, understanding budgets. This is the greatest thing I ask, and I'm going to toggle back here to the screen. And you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but how many people actually have a budget? And we got one person got a budget. And follow-up question is, 2 people, do you actually have it written down? If it's not a physical presentation of your budget, and we got one person who had it down, it's not a budget. To say that you have, I know what I'm going to do. This is what I spend this on this much and this on this much. If it's not a physical product, whether it be a physical piece of paper, no one does that anymore really. Is it an Excel spreadsheet? Is it Do you use an app to help you along with the process? If you're not going to that physical presentation of the budget, you do not have a budget. That's just what it is. And if you read all these financial books, I'm reading one right now because it can help me get experience hours for my accreditation I'm going for. He talks about stuff the same thing. Everyone raises their hand, they got a budget, but when he asks, okay, where's the physical presentation of it? And they're like, I don't really have it. And it's not a budget. So you want to also, when you do a budget, you want to find out how much you spend. This is the hardest thing really when it comes down to it. You can do it the old-fashioned way, go through old receipts, take a notepad around with you, use your phone as you go through, add things up throughout the day. Use your credit card if you have one, or your debit card to look at your transactions. A lot of credit cards today will help you categorize your spending. But really, you got to figure out, what is my spend plan? I know we in the financial world, we have budgets. Yeah, that's cool. But really, we ask you to do spend plans. How are you going to spend the money that you have? So find your baseline of how much you spend, making sure you focus on your bills. What are your mandatory spending versus discretionary spending? So like in the United States government, we have categories when we do our budgets. We have our mandatory spending, which is our Social Security, our Medicare. Interest, for example, is a mandatory spending. And then you have discretionary items, which is everything else. The DoD budget technically is discretionary. All the budgets out there are discretionary. So whatever's left over from after mandatory spending is discretionary. Same kind of concept. Mortgage, electricity, water, natural gas, if you have that, those kind of scenarios are mandatory. And then next, pull out your paycheck. I'm kind of leaning towards LES because, we are federal entities. What is the difference? You have I make $4,000 a paycheck. Cool. $8,000 a month. Awesome. If your expenses are $10,000, you got a problem. So you want to make sure you can fit it into the budget. Simple stuff, right? I always say use an Excel spreadsheet or computer software to help you create that budget. Very simple. I still use an Excel spreadsheet to this day. I have all my bills written out. I know when they hit my credit card. I have them as dates when I expect them to hit, and I have them red. When I pay them, I put the date I paid them and turn them to green. That's how I like to do it. But a lot of people, younger folks, might be using apps and all that kind of junk, but app is also an expense. It's not free. So you're going to have to pay for that app, and is it really worth the money you're paying for it? But overall, you need to live your life when it comes to everyday expenses and enjoying life and your paycheck. You want to have your mandatory savings. You want to, hopefully you can fit that into your budget, but you want to also make sure there is money for fun and also money for flexibility. A joke I've always said, and if you've ever looked at the book that I put out there on the Teams page, the first few pages is just kind of my experience with life. Christmas Eve, 2022. My wife goes to her doctor's for her womanly annual checkup. I'm a brand new butter bar at Beale Air Force Base, working in my office on Christmas Eve. We don't have the day off like we do now. My wife calls me all hysterical. She's like, they did a pregnancy test on me and they left it out, and they said I'm slightly pregnant. I'm like, all right, what's slightly pregnant? Either you are or you aren't. That's the world. I went home, I bought like every pregnancy test at the BX, went home. My wife took a bunch of tests and it came out, yes, we were pregnant. And I changed the budget the next day. Flexibility, live your life. A kid's coming. Now we got diapers, college fund, extra, I don't know. We breastfed, so we didn't have to worry about the foods for a while, but all that kind of expenses. I started working all that out to make sure I could live my life. Just make sure you have flexibility. And I talk about apps down there again, making sure, I think Rocket app, my kid uses it. It's $8 a month. And I asked her, why do you use it? After you got your budget going, do you still need to use it? So look at things like that. And then I know we have a few finance people on here. For those who aren't, I know this really annoys people when we say your pay is your responsibility. This goes to the same PCARS world. Your points are your responsibility. There is no system double checking that your paycheck is correct. It's really automated when it flows from the personnel system to the finance system, and the finance system spits out a paycheck. If you're not checking your paycheck to make sure it's right, that's your responsibility. You need to bring up the issues that we do not see, because we're not checking all 105,000 people in the Guard to make sure their pay is right. That is one of the big things also about the budget, is making sure your pay is right. I like this thing is a budget tells you what you can afford, but it doesn't keep us from buying it. So if you want that thing, the budget's not going to stop you. There's nothing that's going to flash at you or your phone's going to beep at you saying, do not do this. Do not do this. No. You have to have a little bit of willpower when it comes to it. Simple budget spreadsheet. I put some information out there in the Teams page if you want to look at some Excel spreadsheets. There's so many versions you can use, just a simple version. I put a little more extravagant version out there as well with some formulas, but use what works for you. Make sure you're comfortable. And then I like to put caution. This is where if you're mentoring anyone, having kids out there, especially those who are starting the first job, maybe just graduated college, moving on, or just maybe enlisted in the military. This is just a personal note for me, is that what I've seen, what I've learned over all the years is do not plan on investing in the stock, meaning stock market investing, until you have at least 3 months of living expenses sitting in a savings account. This is called your emergency fund. And these are just your mandatory bills sitting there in case you lose your job. So 3 months is recommended for someone like in the military or a civilian, because we're more apt to not have the job cutting, although, it's different nowadays. But we have more stability versus those in the private sector. For the private sector, we recommend 6 months of living expenses sitting in your emergency fund. Also, you may want to think about setting up a sinking fund account before you start investing. This is things like insurance that you're going to pay every month or every year. Car maintenance bills that are going to come. Every 5,000 miles, you got to spend $100 and get an oil change. Or if you do it yourself, it's still $50. Setting up an account like that as well for those annual expenses that you can replenish every year. But it's a good idea to figure out what is going to show up. Whether you have a job or not, you're going to have to pay for insurance, pay for health insurance, pay for dental, car, credit card bills, which hopefully you don't have, but we'll talk about that later. But when I say investing, if you happen to be a military member, young civilian, your kid's starting out in a job, and that job offers a 401k or a thrift savings plan option, still make sure they contribute to their TSP or 401k to get the matching contributions from the employer. So if the employer offers matching contributions, like, for example, the government under the BRS, Blended Retirement System for Military, or your FERS system, if you put in 5%, you get in 5%. So make sure, regardless of this emergency fund, you're still putting 5% into TSP because you want your free money. FERS employees, I think, automatically get enrolled now in the 5%. BRS only get enrolled at 3%. So if you know someone out there who has BRS and they haven't checked, they need to make sure they go in there and bump it up for the 2% more so they can get their matching contributions. That is one of those things, just a caution. I have a kid who works in the private sector up in Syracuse, working for a movie company. They're working on the emergency fund. And they even told me, I want to make sure I have my emergency fund set before I do anything. I'm like, all right, good. Listen, my kid listened to me. I'm very happy. I'll toggle back here for any questions. All right, Excel doc, good. David, that's, we're old school, right? I know you're younger than me, but you're old. That's old school. That's good. I like it. But in the budget itself, you got to make sure you make savings a priority. A lot of people treat it as a bill, and I would say do it as a bill as well. That 5% you contribute to your TSP could be your savings priority right there. Making sure you're always putting money away for the bigger purpose, the greater good. That is something a lot of people, when they talk about the budget, they may do like 60% of their budget is going to be mandatory expenses. And they do 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 for fun, 10 for mandatory savings, 10 for a sinking fund, and 10 for, I can't remember what the other 10 is for, but there's different formulas that you want to do, is making sure you always have money set aside for savings, recommended 10% of your net, for your gross money. You want to make sure, if you make $8,000 a month, meaning your salary is then, let's say 96,000, you're making 8,000, you want to put away 10% of that every month. Not the net, use the gross, because you want to put as much away as you can and make it a priority. And then you always want to put 10% away for fun, and then you can mess around with other percentages, but you want to make sure you cover all your mandatory bills, but also build in mandatory savings. This is just something that I recommend, that if you're married, try to live on one salary. It makes it a lot easier when you PCS, you move around, that in case your spouse can't find a job, you no worries. You've already been living on one salary. And that's just something I've recommended. I've seen it work. I've used it myself. It just helps when you move around. I moved 10 times in 20 years, and even in the Guard, I was moving around. My wife was a teacher. She didn't always teach because of the kids scenario, but it's nice to just save her paycheck as it went along. It's money in the bank. And just when you factor in your ranks, you want to make sure you fine tune your budget in your early career. If you know what you have to spend, every rank, every promotion upgrade, every time and grade increase, that's money you can put away for savings. It's always good. By E4, by O2, you should have a fine-tuned budget of what you spend, what's your mandatory expenses, so that you know when you make E5, when you make O3, that's just money in the bank. Put it right in the bank. All right, time, consistency, and growth. This goes back to setting goals. You know you're not going to be a millionaire tomorrow. You're not going to be able to afford that $53,000 car tomorrow without taking out a huge loan. If you want to retire by age 47, 55, 57, 60, and you want to have $1 million in the bank, you got to understand it's going to take time to get to that point. But consistency is going to help you. It's discipline. If you build savings into your budget and you're consistent with the amounts, those small amounts will add up to larger amounts, depending on the market and everything, and we'll talk about that here. The interest rates you get in your savings accounts, the stock market, all those kind of things. But as long as you're building that consistency to hit your goal, that is what you want to have, that mindset. And then understanding growth, understanding interest rates. The rule of thumb is the higher the interest rate that you get, and interest rates we're referring to when you open a savings account, they offer you a interest rate saying, hey, if you put your money in a savings account, we'll pay you 1%, 2%, 3%, 0.01%. That is the interest we're talking about. If you invest in the stock market, normally they deal with averages, yearly averages, year-to-date averages. They could pay 6, 8, 10, 25, 50, 100%. The rule of thumb is the higher the interest rate that you see, the higher the risk. And risk means losing your money. That's why savings accounts, relatively low interest rates, they're relatively safe. Most of the time they're insured. And the higher you go, like in the stock market, your money is not insured at all. So if the stock loses money, you lose money, kind of scenario. But you want to understand growth, because growth builds into time, and consistency will build into both to make sure you get to that world. Like if your goal was to buy a Audi TT 20 years, or when you retired and you're putting away $200 a month every month, and you're seeing it grow, boom. You could have it, you could not have it. And this next graph is kind of can show you how growth can easily work. If you have $100, say 20 years, you start in as an E3, you come in the military, you're saying 20 years, I'm going to retire, and I want my dream car. But one you have to realize is that dream car today is not going to be the same price 20 years from now. So that's where you want to kind of build inflation, as we talk about, which is kind of a watchword lately in the news, is inflation. So today, $100 may be worth X amount, but if you were to just keep that $100 under your mattress, inflation is going to erode the value of that $100. And I have an example in the next few slides about it as well. But just understanding that car today, if it's worth $20,000, good luck finding a car for $20,000 today, right? With inflation, it's probably 3 to 4% every year. It's going to grow over 20 years. So that car might now be $60,000 when you're set to retire. And this is an example of how consistency and time and growth can help you plan for the future. If you keep that money under your mattress, and that's old school. We used to hear that. I don't know where they keep it now. It used to be like buried in the backyard in a pickle jar or under your mattress. I don't know what the new lingo is, but if you did that, you earn no interest whatsoever. In 20 years from now, that money is going to be worth $24,000. And because of inflation, it has eroded over its lifespan. If you put it in a savings account, and I put 4.4, that's just a higher one. We haven't seen that lately. I think we saw it maybe last year, year before it got up that high. but now it's I think hovering, the higher rates are hovering in the low 4s to low 3s, depending on your bank. That would earn interest, and over the next 20 years, you'll have $38,000. It may keep up with inflation, it may not. So it could be worth your car, might not, who knows? And then if you invest in the stock market, as an example, I put 10% on average. I'm not saying the stock market gives you 10% automatically. I'm saying it's just a number to show you how money can grow. That $100 every month over 20 years, so $1,200 a year over 20 years, is now worth $72,400. So $24,000 has grown, has tripled. Time, growth, consistency. I always do fun math, like the whole 2 + 2 = 5 scenario that our budgets are built on in the government. Because if you look in the justification books that we submit to Congress, we always put in the clause, numbers may not add up due to rounding, because we always round down and we round to a certain decimal point. So 2.4 + 2.4 = 4.8. We use our rounding. That's 2 + 2 = 5. That's the fun of math. So here's another, if you didn't know about the rule of 72, if you're kind of trying to figure out how long it'll take my money to double, we're not talking about the roulette wheel here. We're talking about normal money. It's just a quick test. So if, example, 4% interest, if you have a 4% savings account, roughly it'll take you 18 years to double your money. So $20 will become $40 in 18 years. So it's 72 divided by 4 is 18 years. 10%, you see it's 7.2 years. The higher the interest rate, the quicker you make money, but also it comes into the risk factor that a higher risk will come into play with a 10% investment versus a 4% investment. And you just have to be familiar with your risk level and making sure, one, we all have that emergency fund built up, right? And then two, we can start investing once that's done, and we got to understand risk. And I talk more about risk in the next few days when we build on the literacy. We talk about risk to understand what risk is and what's in play. Inflation, as I mentioned, we talk about here. Let me toggle before I start. Bank accounts, okay, that's the mattress nowadays. Yeah, and we'll talk about that. A lot of people are surprised when we get to the interest rates on your bank might not be treating you very well, and we'll get to that. Inflation, as we talked about, is the enemy of financial goals. It erodes the value of our money. Things end up costing more, and you see that right now. Right now is, I would call, like in the gas scenario, hyperinflation. When I left before I went to Vegas, I think we were $2.74, $2.84. Now the local gas station is $3.80. There's ways to play around with that, and I've been teaching my family that as we talk about inflation, is finding ways to beat inflation besides the normal interest rates and investments that we talk about, is using coupons, making sure you use coupons. They help, especially now. You see with it, if inflation happens with food prices, you'll see food manufacturers pushing out more coupons because, one, they know you can't afford it, but two, it's pretty much sunk cost for them. They have to increase their prices for inflation for the future. The coupons will help. Using Ibotta, for example, I just used it today. Using Fetch, for example, I think Honey is one of them you can use. There's different ones out there. Capital One Shopping, that's made me lots of money. Capital One Shopping. If you're interested in talking about coupons, reach me offline because I'll run you through a whole scenario of it. But also make sure there's a thing called Upside, which is really cool. It may not be in your area, but it works on gas prices. It's just an app you have on your phone, and it'll tell you where local gas stations have deals. I've used that for a while. It saves you 17 cents here, 20 cents there, but you got to make sure that gas is really, truly cheaper. A little thing I have is we have it called Fast Rewards. It's an app that's related to a certain type of gas station. This is related to Valero's and also some other types of ones. But they have in there, you can save 50 cents on a gallon of gas, up to 20 gallons. You go in their store, you buy a certain product, and if you do it right, they'll give you 50 cents on a gallon, and then you can still use Upside. But you got to make sure that product is something that you would use. For example, I had a deal to buy 2 Monsters, the energy drinks, 2 for $5.50, and I would get 50 cents off a gallon of gas. And then I bought Red Bull, 2 for $6, which I like Red Bull. Well, that's not too bad of a price. I ended up getting 65 cents off a gallon. So I turned whatever, I think it was $3.39 at the pump to $2.74 at the pump for products I was already buying. So things like that to beat inflation, you have to change the mindset of you don't have to pay those prices. You can do it smarter. Shop things on sale with coupons. That's how you beat inflation, because things end up costing more, but your money does not change. And in case you didn't know this, but we probably all have heard it before. You just try to think about it, that the military doesn't receive annual pay raises because we're awesome. We should, but it's because of inflation. Congress may say it's for, oh, you guys are doing a great job, we're going to give you 4.4%. It's really just for inflation. So examples of inflation, it's linked to the Consumer Product Index if you wanted to look it up. You can actually go online, look at the Consumer Product Index, and look at different products, eggs, milks, butter. They have all that different type of information out there if you're interested in what it was. But just an example of a loaf of white bread. I just did this, but the 2026 wasn't published yet. 1980, 50 cents. 2005, 99 cents. I don't remember that, but that's what they say. And in 2025, $1.84 for a standard what? And we're probably referring to store brand white bread. We're not talking about Dave's Super Organic Bread, which is $6 a loaf, which could skyrocket with inflation. Inflation kills us. So make sure you're always kind of watching and doing smart things to save yourself money. And literally, if you want to talk about Capital One shopping, you don't have to have a Capital One card. Talk to me, because I will tell you right now, I will have $5,000 by the end of the month that I can redeem for gift cards. I upgraded my whole bedroom because my mattress was old. I bought an adjustable bed frame because my bed frame was broken. I basically got everything for at least the minimum, I think, was 50% off, as high as 75% off. So I upgraded my whole bedroom for $1,200. Brand new king mattress, king adjustable frame. I'm building a mega bed. I'm adding on a twin XL to my bed because I have a dog and the pets take up too much room. And then I got a twin XL mattress. Literally $1,200 for all that. Smart shopping. And I can show you how to do it. If we have time, I'll show you how to do it. But this is just an example, if you're into numbers, to show how inflation does erode over time. So that $1,000 over time at 4, 5, 6% inflation, and I guess I think we're probably in the 4 to 5, 6 range right now with everything going on, if not more. So $1,000 that you have under your mattress, if you leave it there, and there's a 4% inflation, which is, I'll probably say average. I've heard 2% out there as well, but with everything going on, it's been fluctuating. The value of that $1,000 sitting in your mattress or the regular savings account that David mentioned there, it's only going to be able to buy you $822 worth of stuff. The same stuff. You can only buy $822 worth of it now. So you have lost $35 a year in purchasing power if you're not dealing with inflation. So I like that chart. You can see for 25 years, again, if you just keep money, and we've probably had grandparents who didn't trust banks because of what happened. That's what can happen. So we're talking about basic savings vehicles, but let me check here to make sure no questions there. The things you may not have thought of. Checking account, this is your most important vehicle. Number one rule, I like to always put rules. My number one rule when I was DIB chief, when I was working, or actually it's for a long time, my number one rule was you better make your suspense. That's the number one rule, because that deals with credibility. The number one rule when it comes to banking is make sure your bank's insured. FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or NCUA, National Credit Union Administration. Make sure your bank's insured. If it's not, I would get out and punch as soon as you can. Each depositor is insured up to $250,000. And there's a lot of different ones out there that you could have more insurance based upon how they classify. For example, I do invest with Vanguard, and they do have a savings account, which is insured, but they say, open this up and you're insured up to $1.25 million. I'm like, okay, they have different rules when it comes to it, but the minimum should be per depositor $250,000. This is where your direct link to your plan, to your budget, to your time consistency and growth is your checking account. And if you're not treating yourself right when it comes to your checking account, you're doing yourself a disservice. It could be interest or non-interest bearing, depending on your bank. And I'll tell you, most time the interest you get is pretty crappy. But I get sometimes 31 cents. a month, but I don't keep a lot of money in my checking account. I move it around because I have my savings goals. I push it around to different savings accounts to get that higher interest rate. Look for free checking. If you're not getting free checking, and I talk more about this later, you are throwing money away because there's a lot of sometimes catches. Free checking is not always free checking. It's free checking with caveats. You must have this much in a monthly, daily average in your account. You must have a direct deposit. You must have this. That's not really free checking. That's free checking with different rules. And I'll talk about that more later. ATM cards. This can kill people. When I was younger, when ATM cards started coming out, because, you know, I'm in that generation, like most of you on the call, I recognize your names and I know in the same generation I am, is that we made the transition from analog to digital, to going into a bank with a bank book. To make a deposit, they ran it through a machine. It used to print out like a laser printer on how much you had and how much interest you got, to the age of digital age when it's all on your phone. And now you can have ATM cards and all this kind of stuff. I didn't send my first email until college, a freshman in college. Beware the ATM cards. Those can be dangerous because I've seen so many people when I was younger, when I was in BIFMA for a finance officer course, when I was a first lieutenant, other young lieutenants, just going to the ATM, not even caring of how much the ATM's charging them, because not all ATMs are free. I know USAA will reimburse you up to X amount for your ATM pulls, but be careful where you pull money from and making sure it's your ATM network, because they could charge you on both sides. That ATM machine could charge you, and plus your bank can charge you. It gets really sticky, but just be very careful. But also, checking accounts have the ability to Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, all those kind of cool ways you can send money to each other. It's changed so much since when I originally wrote my book back in 05, 06. It was different from back then. You couldn't even deposit checks with your phone back then. You had to go to a physical location. It was different. It was weird. But now you have so much at your fingertips, but you make sure you have the right bank. Savings account. This is where you should kind of link this to your emergency fund and your sinking fund and all those different kind of maybe vacation funds, college funds, retirement car fund, things like that. This is your savings account. Number one rule applies here. Make sure it's FDIC, NCUA. You don't have to have your checking account and your savings account at the same bank. It doesn't have to happen that way. You could have it. That's cool, but you don't have to have it. With today's day and age and the digital transfers, you can have a checking account in your local area that offers you free checking, right? Free checking, unlimited free checking. But then you have a high interest yield savings account it's located in South Dakota. That's where their home is. You could have it there. That's fine. They're linked, digitally linked, but make sure they're all insured. Rule number one always applies. It's when I was at my peak of budgeting, because I went from active duty to a technician, and I didn't realize how much of a pay cut I took. I didn't know I could negotiate my salary. So I went from a first lieutenant finance instructor at the finance schoolhouse to a guard budget officer as a GS-12 step 1. I didn't know I could negotiate. I should have been probably at least a 5 because I had the experience level. But, I went to a huge budget crunch and I started working things. And as I became more comfortable with my salary, I ended up having, I think I had maybe 10 savings accounts at my bank. I had them all listed separately. I had pet fund because we had pets, and that's a sinking fund right there. We have a Dachshund. Her teeth need to be cleaned to the tune of $2,000. And my wife told me, it's not that the vet said, yeah, you might want to do it. It's like, you need to have this animal's teeth cleaned because it's going to affect her life. So, hey, pet fund, put money away. Diaper fund, college funds, emergency funds, utility fund, escrow fund, if you did your own escrow, saving for a house fund, down payment fund, all those different things. You can set up all these different savings accounts to keep you focused, to build consistency, to have your time and your growth all into play, and just label them correctly. Interest rates vary based on the bank. The computer age, as I mentioned, you have all these online banks. And again, as long as rule number one applies, they're FDIC or NCUA insured, you can invest anywhere. If you go to Bankrate, and you go and look at high yield savings, and this is as 23 Feb. So this is about a month ago. These banks, the only one I've ever heard of is EverBank. But these banks, minimum deposit of $1, you get 4.6%. But you have to read the fine print. Is that an introductory rate? Is Pi Bank going to offer me 4.6 and change it? Because all these things are going to change. Just because you sign up for 4.6% doesn't mean it's going to continue at 4.6%, because as the Federal Reserve changes their borrowing rates, because you see a lot of the Fed is always in the news that they keep interest rates the same. That affects mortgages, but it also affects savings accounts, because if you didn't know, savings accounts and mortgages are directly linked. When you open a savings account with a bank, they're paying you 4.6% as an example in Pi Bank, but what they're going to do is take your money and loan it out to people in the form of maybe a mortgage or a business loan, and they're going to charge 8%, and they make the difference. So we'll say Pi Bank 4.6, you put $1,000 in there. They're going to offer $1,000 to a business loan at 8.6. They just made 4% on your money, and that's how they do it. Most banks will change as the Fed changes. You're going to expect that. But sometimes banks offer an introductory rate for like 90 days, and then they drop down to a different rate. Read the fine print. If you need help, reach out to me. I'm happy to look into the bank for you, because, I like to do that kind of stuff and happy to do it. Minimum deposit is always important, $1. I will tell you who I have. I'm not going to push them on you at all. In this book, again, for experience hours for my accreditation, I'm becoming an accredited financial counselor like you see at the family support centers, so that maybe, who knows, part-time I can actually help people out for a company or something. Or who knows, one day I might show up at the ANGRC as your accredited financial counselor. I highly doubt it. I can say they couldn't afford me, but they could afford me, but it's probably not practical. It's written by Ramit Sethi, Ramit S, and his last name is Sethi. I guess he has a Netflix show, How to Get Rich. And I'm reading his book, and I'm like, dude, I know all this already, so I'm skimming it. Going, yep, I've teach that one. I agree with you. I haven't disagreed with anything so far, but when he talks about his banks, I'm like, holy crap, I have the same guy. So I'm not. My thinking is, in long, I started off in ING Direct. I did the same thing. I went the bank rate. I was looking for a high interest savings account. I started with ING Direct. I got really good interest rates. And then Capital One 360 bought ING Direct, so I stayed with them. They're not always the highest, but they're competitive. They're always competitive. And I like their customer service. I like their bank. I like their interface. I just like them. I'm not going to push them by any means on you. But when I signed up, I got a bonus. They sometimes run Black Friday bonuses, so my kids got stuff. My kids all have it right now. But it's just easy to use. And I can actually go and use the Capital One. The nearest one is like 45 minutes away, but I can use it if I wanted to. I like them. Again, not the highest interest rates, but they're easy to use. And sometimes they offer bonuses, like an introductory rate, like these people would do. But there's other good, like Ally is a good bank as well. My cousin uses them, and actually he talks about them in the book as well. Marcus, which is Goldman Sachs. I know a lot of people hear Goldman Sachs and they don't like them. I've used Marcus before. They're pretty good. I even use American Express has a bank attached to themselves. They offer pretty good rates. If you, I don't think you have to have an American Express card. You can just go ahead and open it up, but they have pretty decent rates as well. So there's a lot of different avenues out there that they might not show up the highest, but they are a good brand that will have a good platform, that it won't be clunky, because when you're doing banking, you want to make sure you don't have a clunky interface. But again, I'm not pushing anything on you. I'm just telling you what I have, and I've enjoyed them over the years, and I really like them. But go ahead and please look out there, and because that's what I did over the years. CDs, I like to talk about CDs, certificate of deposits. We're not talking about the old discs that we used to play music on back in the old days, which I still have. This is a nice way if you want to figure out time, growth, and consistency. But certificate deposits are your money frozen in time. They're very similar to a savings account, but your money is frozen and you really can't touch it. Rule number one always applies. These are great for planning. Say, for example, you're getting married. You're getting married in 2 years. You and your spouse have decided in 2 years we're engaged. We're going to have a big wedding. We know it's going to cost X amount of dollars, and The stock market is pretty risky. Anytime you have a financial goal within a 5-year window, you better stay out of the stock market. That's just not me talking. That's every financial expert talking. I really say 5 to 10, but 5 years is on average. If you have a financial goal coming in 5 years, you better keep it in cash or cash equivalent safe. And that's why CDs are great. If you know that it's going to cost you $12,000 in 2 years, you can figure out that you could put in, say, $10,500 today, and it's going to grow to $12,000 in 2 years. CDs are really cool that way. You can put your money into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year CDs. They offer a higher interest rate because they're taking a risk, and they really want to take your money and invest it a little more long-term than a savings account, the bank. So they offer you higher interest rates. But these give you the ability to kind of lock in money for a longer time for goals and consistencies. And to get the higher interest rate and still be insured is kind of a great thing. I don't recommend it for like retirement planning because you're not going to get the higher interest rates that you need, but it's kind of good for setting financial goals. And with laddering, as I mentioned here, if you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year CDs, every year money is coming up. So what you'll do is if you have the 1 through 5, your 1-year CD comes up, what you do, you take that money and then you invest it in the 5-year CD, a new 5-year CD, because your 5 now became your 4, your 4 became your 3, your 2 became your 1, and your 1 you just cashed in. It kind of keeps money rolling around at a different interest rate so you can plan. And they vary. You can look at bankrate.com for stuff, but they do have a penalty. For some reason, if you put your money in there for a year, but you change your mind, what they'll do is they'll just not charge you, but they'll take away some of the interest that you've earned. So that's how they penalize you. Savings bonds, safe as the U.S. government. And I did put ... there for a reason. It's a loan to the U.S. government. They're not insured, but they're backed by the full faith of the U.S. government. ... There's 2 types out there. The double E actually went away for a while, and it's back now. That's the one your grandmother probably gave you back in the day. They bought you a $100 savings bond, but it only cost them $50 at the time because that's how it works. You buy it at half value and it matures. About over 20 years on average, that bond will mature. So like today, you could go ahead and buy, if you wanted to buy a $10,000 bond, double E bond today for $10,000, in 20 years, it's going to double. That's cool. But it's not insured, but is backed by the U.S. government. So you're loaning the government money for them to pay for the discretionary military DoD budget. That's how those work. And also they offer an inflation index bond, which is bought at face value, but they promise their earnings will keep pace with inflation. That is their promise. So what they do is every 6 months, there's 2 parts to it. You have a fixed interest rate and then a variable one. So you always buy every 6 months, the fixed rate will change. But then the inflation will change every 6 months to keep pace with inflation. When these first came out, man, these are offering so much. I should have bought them back in the day. I think they were paying 9% when they first came out because inflation was super high. But if the fixed side is super high, that's where you want to buy them. But that's where you buy them, Treasury Direct. Go ahead. If you want to talk about them, email me and we'll talk about them. They do have liquidity rules. I won't go into too much about that, but they will penalize you if you cash early. But it's cool that they're only taxed by the federal government. So your state can actually tax them. So when you actually get your interest from the double E bond, they will tax you, but only the federal government. And there's the current rates right there. So the I bond is 4%, but only part of that is fixed. Another one is inflationary. But here, what to look for in a bank? Again, I've said rule number 1, right? What changes? Rule number 1, make sure they're insured. Do they truly offer free checking? Do they have a minimum balance requirement? Do they require direct deposit? The reason I was thinking about this lately is because my oldest up in Syracuse was asking me about banks. What should they choose to get a local bank? Because they have Capital One, but they want a local bank because in case they have to deposit larger checks or different things or cash, I want to get a local bank. So I actually did the research for them. I went through all the different banks up there. I looked at them, who truly offered free checking. I made a spreadsheet for them to kind of balance it out, saying this is who I believe is your best one because they truly offer free checking. But also I looked at the convenience factor. What are their lobby hours? Do they have direct deposit or deposit in their ATMs? Do they have ATMs around? Do they have weekend hours? All these different things I kind of researched for them so they could make an informed decision. Convenience is very important when you look at a bank. Plus, you want no fees. Is the local branch near you? Does it offer you physical access to cash and ability to deposit? That's something I thought about. Online banks, do they have agreements with ATMs to deposit money? Will they reimburse your ATM fees like USAA does, for example? Online banks, can you do it via your phone? Some phones will not let you deposit checks over X amount of dollars. An issue happened with my kid's girlfriend. They got a loan check for $20,000. Their bank would not allow them to deposit it over the phone. So they also had to go find a local bank. And that's why also I had to do some research for them. Things like that might happen. How will you deal with it? Online banks, in case you didn't know about this, is cash deposits. I can't make a cash deposit over my phone. Capital One, for example, and a lot other banks do this the same way. They have agreements with stores like Walgreens or CVS or 7-Eleven. I did this morning. I took some of my Vegas winnings. I went to Walgreens. I did it on the app. I can only deposit $999 at a time. So I did $900 Walgreens. They scanned my phone. I gave them the money. They checked it. They deposited it. Boom, it's now in my checking account. They have a limit of how much you can do per month. Like I can only do $5,000 per month, $1,500 per day, only $1,000 at a time. Little rules like that happen, but there's options with those online banks. Because again, I'm not pitching Capital One, but Capital One truly has free checking. You don't have to pay for anything except for checks. And who writes checks nowadays? You want to minimize fees, read the fine print. And you see this, once you have college age students, they do offer free checking for students. A lot of these banks offer free checking for students. But once they hit graduation age or 26, boom, they're going to hit with all these fees. Make sure they read the fine print. Wells Fargo is a prime example of these. You got to read the fine print with them. Plus, you got to watch them. They got sued for creating fake bank accounts. So you got to watch also your bank, and that comes into comfort factor. Do you feel comfortable about using an online bank? Do you need to use a physical bank? Do you feel comfortable with the bank itself? Research the bank. If your bank has been accused of fraudulent practices, do you really want to deal with them? Sometimes you have to. For example, my oldest when they were at James Madison University had to get a Wells Fargo account because that was the only bank really around them that they could use. So we opened up the student account. It was all free. They had to open a savings account with $5. But those fees, I read the fine print. I'm like, we got to get rid of them as soon as you graduate. Because I didn't want to pay all the fees. But we had to do it because of comfort factor. We had to make sure they had access to a local bank because they were depositing checks and they were getting cash from their work. It was something college students had to deal with. So you have to look at your bank and are you getting the best deal on your checking? Are you truly getting free checking? Are there any rules and caveats? Are you getting monthly fees coming in for not having a daily average in your bank account? There are so many options out there today that you can get totally free checking and high interest rates on the rule number one, FDIC, NCUA insured banks out there. As I showed you through bankrate.com, they're out there. Do your research, ask me questions along the way. I can research a bank for you, but there's ways to grow your money. Time, growth, consistency. That's what you want to focus on. And I will tell you, let's see what I have next year. If you really look at your banks today, I'm going to call out a few banks because I've researched them enough that I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm just going to call them out for things that are on their website. And I'm just going to go to this last one here. Before I go into that one, and I'm going to go back to the screen so you can all see, you have all these slides. There's my email address. That's my personal email address. If you have questions, please contact me. Most of you have my cell phone anyway. You can contact me that way. Just if you email me, put in the subject line something like, class help, PCARS help, pension help. So I know it's not spam. But I'm here. I want to help you. Plus, I need counseling hours. But I want to help you because I think our financial literacy in this world, especially in America, is crap. And the more we can learn, the more we can live, and more we can have a better future. So I'm going to go back to see if any questions. I'm going to call out a few banks. USAA, I like them. Don't get me wrong. They have a great checking account. I think they're free if you have direct deposit though. But look at their savings accounts. Look at their savings accounts. And I bet you if you look at it, just like most of your big banks, your Wells Fargo's, your Bank America's, even some of your credit unions, your Navy Federal, what they do is a tiered savings rate. So if you put in $1,000, you'll get X interest rate. If you put in $10,000, you'll get more, but XY interest rate. But if you look at their interest rates, they are low, 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 low. They're in the business really of just loaning money out to other businesses and mortgages. So they want to make as much money as they possibly can. They pay crappy interest rates. So what I want you all to do is, it's not homework, but it's just kind of, we'll say, mind-altering experiences. All take a look at your banks. And one, look to see if your savings account has a tiered rate. What is the interest rate that your bank charges you based upon the dollar amount you put in? If you're in the tiered rate, I would say go check out Bankrate and see if there's other options out there for you. Because as I showed you on the slides, you will get, for those 5 banks, for a minimum deposit of $1, you get their interest rates. If you deposit $10,000, you get your same interest rate. They don't charge you any different or give you credit for interest rate any different for how much money you put in. And that's what you want as we'll call you as a consumer. Look at your checking account. Look at the fine print. For some reason, if you're a DSG, we'll say, and you retire before you get a military pension, and you decide, you know what, I'm not going to work for a while, I'm going to chill, and you're not getting a direct deposit, you actually might be being charged fees. So I ask you to look over your last few bank statements, and yes, bank statements do exist. You can find them on your, most likely you all have online access to your bank. Go ahead, look, download your last statement, and look for fees. Look for ATMs fees. Look for all those little things, circle them. How much money could you have saved by getting Truly Free Checking? That's a little homework assignment, but I really want you all to look at your savings accounts. I hope you all have emergency funds, 3 to 6 months of living expenses in there. I want you to all look at your interest rates and see if you can do better. But then I will also say you have to be comfortable in going to the online world to get higher interest rates. You can't just go to the local Capital One and say, hey, I want that online savings account. No, that doesn't work that way. They'll give you their savings account, which will probably pay next to nothing. You have to go the online way, but rule number 1 applies. Make sure they're insured, and you can start getting the high interest rates. All right. Now I'm going to kind of open up the questions here, and let's see what David said here. Are you? Yep. That is beautiful. That is what I've done as well, and that's a great way to do it. And that's what my kid did at JMU as well. Is they had Wells Fargo as their physical local bank, and then they put all their money, they would transfer to Capital One to get the higher interest rate. And that's exactly what you do. It does take time to transfer the money between it. So for example, if you have a local bank account, like I say, I open up a Navy Federal down the street because I need to deposit cash. I have still my Capital One. You set up a link. So when you go through the process with Capital One, they're going to ask you where or how do you want the money sent. You link your local checking account, and the transfers happen. It's 1 to 3 business days, depending on the day of the week. It'll take you to transfer money. But the best thing about what you wrote in there is it's truly a savings account, because you don't have instant access to your funds. And that's a very important thing that you should probably tell your kids out there, is if you have a savings account in the same area as your checking account, that you can easily dip into your savings account and start paying for things or grabbing money and doing this, probably not what you want to do, because that makes it not truly a savings account. It makes it another checking account. By having these online banks getting the higher interest rates, it's truly in that savings realm, because you're like, yeah, it's going to take me 3 days to get that money. Can I really afford it? Kind of scenario. But that's a great point. Thanks, Dave, for sharing that. So I'll open this up to questions, and I'll stay on past 1 if you have any questions along. But the next few days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, are going to kind of build on this one. I think Monday is taxes, is I believe what it is, which is kind of build on basic savings, because if you understand taxes, how it relates to your budget, it will kind of flow. And then we talk about debt management, which is very important as well, because we got to get that under control. And then we kind of build into some investments and TSPs and IRAs. So we're doing a succession of growth of mind altering, hopefully information that you may or may not know. Maybe it's a refresher, but it's good to have this information to share with others, because no one really thinks about sometimes, is my bank screwing me over? That's a question you should all kind of think and take. Is my bank screwing me over? Am I comfortable with my bank? Does my bank have a good reputation? Can I get a higher interest rate elsewhere when rule number 1 applies, being insured? So I'll be quiet and ask if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And again, I will stay on longer if need be, but you all have my email address. It's on that last page. Happy to answer any questions as I move along. So I will pause.
Hey, thanks, Colonel D. I got to bounce for another meeting, but appreciate it. Knowledge is
All right,
always
thanks, Casey.
power.
All right, have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you, Colonel D. I wanted to kind of throw in the caveat too of not just federal jobs being usually more or not as, I forget how you phrased it early on, is, like we don't have necessarily as much as in the public sector of fear of losing our job, but government shutdowns are fairly common. And I can tell you, my wife told me she finally appreciated my budgeting for the first time when the government was shut down for 40 some days. So it does pay off.
Absolutely. And having that emergency fund set aside just in case, especially think about our younger folks out there, GS7s, GS9s, who may have a mortgage. If they're not setting aside that emergency fund, they might be in trouble. It's absolutely, that's a great way. The TSA today, that's crazy. So I feel sorry for that out there, but yeah, that is now the normal thing will be government shutdowns probably for the next 3 years. And then hopefully we might get to some normalcy, but I'm not allowed to speculate, and I won't go into any further from that perspective since this is recorded. But thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
You too. Have a good weekend. All right. Any other questions out there? Again, I will stay on. I will stop recording here at 1 o'clock, and so you don't have to have your questions recorded. But I just want to make that available to anyone out there if you have any final questions. But I'll go ahead. I'll stop the recording right now so you can feel free to ask things off camera.